presidents get to nominate, but the Senate must confirm. And this advice and consent power the Constitution gives is a confirmation process. It's not a coronation. A mere 5 justices on the Supreme Court can hold, and 4 of them recently voted to, not the 5 necessary to render a majority opinion. 5 justices could hold that a company cannot publish a book or a pamphlet that criticizes a politician before an election. They can hold that the government can allow, the Constitution would allow states and cities to deny Americans the personal right to keep and bear arms, clearly stated in the Constitution. The American people have no direct control over these justices. All they have, and what they have a right to expect, is that our justices exercise self-control year after year, decade after decade. And if this young nominee, Elena Kagan, were to serve to the age of the individual she is now replacing, or would seek to replace, she would serve 38 years on the Supreme Court. Well, I'm not able to support Elena Kagan for this office. I believe she does not have the gifts and qualities of mind or temperament that one must have to be a justice, and worse still, she possesses a judicial philosophy that does not properly value discipline, restraint, and rigorous intellectual honesty. Instead, she seems to admire the view and has as her judicial heroes judges who favor expansive readings of what they call the living Constitution, whereby judges seek, in President Obama's words, who certainly shares this view, to advance, as he said, quote, a broader vision of what America should be, close quote. Well, I don't believe that's a responsibility or a power given to judges to advance visions of what America should be. Whose vision is it they would advance, I would ask? And it would be the judge's vision. But they weren't appointed for that purpose. They were appointed to adjudicate cases. President Obama, whose judicial philosophy I think is flawed, certainly thinks this is her philosophy. He basically said so when he appointed her. Her friends say it is so. Her critics say so. Her record of public action say so. And the style and manner of her testimony at the hearing evidence such an approach to judging. I don't think it's a secret. I think this is pretty well known, that this is not a judge committed to restraint, objectivity, but believes in the power of judges to expand and advance the law and visions of what the judge may think is best for America. Ms. Kagan has been described as collegial, engaging, a consensus builder, and these are fine qualities in many circumstances, and I'm sure she possesses them. She seems to. But as to personal discipline, clarity of mind, the ability to come quickly to the heart of a matter, objectivity or impartiality, and scrupulous intellectual honesty, characteristics essential for a judge, not so much has been said. Perhaps this is so because many of our liberal activists in America have lost faith in the idea of objectivity, which really means they've lost faith in the reality of objective truth, the finding of truth has been the goal, the central focus of the American legal system since its creation. Yet our modern law school minds and some false intellectuals far removed from real trials, and I've had the honor and privilege to spend 15 years trying cases before federal judges, and I have a sense of this, I truly believe. They're removed from these trials and from the necessity of rules for civil order. They think, many of them do, these professors and theoreticians, that laws are just tools for the powerful to control the powerless, and that words can't have fixed meanings. Things just change, you know. We can't consult 16th century dictionaries to find out what the founding fathers meant when they wrote our Constitution. Indeed, Justice Sotomayor recently confirmed, quoted with approval the line, quote, "There is no objectivity, just a series of perspectives." Americans are sick of political spin by politicians, and they don't want it from judges. They reject judges who rely on their empathy, as the president said a judge must have, and that's what he looks for in a judge. The American people don't believe that judges should rely on their empathy to decide legal cases, and judges who seek to advance their vision of what America should be. They know justices are not above the law. They know justices should be neutral umpires, not taking sides in the game. Above all, they know judges, especially Supreme Court justices, should not legislate from the bench. I do not desire that the Supreme Court advance my political views. It is enough, day after day, that the court follows the law, deciding cases honestly. No more should ever be asked of them. I might not agree one day or with this case or that one, but we have a right to expect those judges would be objective and not promote agendas. A recent liberal commentator once said, quote, "We liberals have gotten to the point where we want the court to do for us that which we can no longer win at the ballot box." Well, this nominee, I think, my honest evaluation is that she comes from that mold. Yes, she's young, but her philosophy is not so recent. It is an old bankrupt judicial activism, a philosophy the American people correctly reject. In her writings, her judicial heroes, her extensive political activities, her Harvard actions to restrict the military unlawfully, her hostility to congressional actions against terrorism, in a letter she wrote, her efforts to block restrictions on partial birth abortion while in the Clinton White House, her Supreme Court arguments last year that Congress can ban pamphlets criticizing politicians, and perhaps the most disturbing to me, as someone who spent 15 years in the Department of Justice, her actions as Solicitor General of the United States, whereby she failed to defend the don't ask, don't tell congressional law, not military policy, a law she had openly, deeply opposed, but which she promised to vigorously defend were she to be confirmed as Solicitor General. Leave no doubt what kind of judge she would be. An activist, liberal, progressive, politically minded judge who will not be happy simply to decide cases, but will seek to advance her causes under the guise of judging. In addition, her defense of these positions at her hearings, her testimony, in my opinion, lacked clarity, accuracy, and the kind of intellectual honesty that you really look for in someone who would sit on such a high and important court. Indeed, her testimony was curious. She failed to convey to the committee, in my opinion, a recognition of the gravity of the issues with which she had been dealing and the nature of her role in dealing with some of these issues that she was involved with in her career. She just seemed to suggest that things happened around her and she just did all things right and no one should get upset about it. Now, some of these concerns, I think, could have been overcome had we seen the superb quality of testimony at her hearing given by that of Justices Roberts and Alito at their hearings. But alas, that we did not see, not even close. Glib, at times humorous, smooth, conversant on many issues, but not impressive on any in a more serious way, in my view. Based on so little serious legal practice, only 2 years right out of law school in a law firm and 14 months as Solicitor General, This perhaps should not be surprising. The power of the testimony of Roberts and Alito did not spring fully formed from their minds either. Though both seem to be naturally gifted in the skills needed for superior judges, and I fear Elena Kagan is not so blessed, while she is truly intelligent, the exceptional qualities of her mind may be better suited to dealing with students and unruly faculty than with the hard daily work of deciding tough cases in the Supreme Court. But Roberts and Alito, on the other hand, were steeped in the law over many years as lawyers and judges. That's who they were. That's their skill. That was their craft. That was their business. They understood it. It showed. Ms. Kagan did not show that. I believe that lack of experience was part of the reason her testimony was unconvincing. I think a real lawyer or experienced judge who'd seen the courtroom and the practice of law would not have tried, as she did, to float their way through the hearing in the manner that she did. Her testimony failed to evidence an understanding of the gravity of the issues with which she was dealing and the important nature of her role in them. She seemed to suggest these events just happened around her, none of which was her responsibility. Several times in the course of her testimony, she inaccurately described the circumstances, the nature of the matters in which she had been engaged to a significant degree, I thought. Her testimony was more consistent with the spin that the White House was putting out than the truth, and I was surprised, really, and disappointed that she was not more candid and did not, through accurate testimony, dispel some of the false spin that had been put out in her favor. So now we're at the beginning of the discussion of the Kagan nomination. While I have been firm in my criticisms of the nominee, I have given considerable thought to the criticism that I've made and tried not to be inaccurate in them. I believe they are correct, but if I'm in error, I would be pleased to admit and correct that error. No nominee should have their record unfairly sullied in this great Senate. That would be wrong. I therefore ask and challenge the supporters of the nominee to point out any errors in my remarks as we go forth so that we can, above all, get the facts straight. The matters I will set forth today and later are serious. There is disagreement, I believe, between what the record, the facts, and the testimony show and the White House spin and even the Kagan spin. And I use that word carefully. So let's therefore begin this debate in all seriousness. Let's get to the bottom of these matters. There is a truth. We can ascertain what happened. Let's find out what happened in these matters. Let's get to the bottom of it. Some raise the question of how many Republicans will vote for the nominee. Another question to ask is how many Democrats will vote against the nominee. I call on every senator to study the record and make an informed and independent decision. We are not lemmings here. We have a constitutional duty to make an independent decision. So I urge my Democratic colleagues to not just to be a rubber stamp, not to allow political pressures to influence your decisions, but make an independent and fair analysis of the nominee.